Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. And let me tell you, part of your business is being a good steward when it comes to your government and really taking ownership of it. I feel like more and more we live in some type of autocratic type of kingdom rather than anything that represents a truly free society. And I consider one of the greatest public intellectuals of the last 50 years to be my guest this segment. Rarely do I get excited. I've been doing talk radio for 25 years, this show for 15 years, but every once in a while I get a guest that really excites me. Charles Murray has been on my program before. I consider him one of the most brilliant people in the public policy debate today. His book, Losing Ground, phenomenal when it comes to explaining how welfare reform actually subsidizes poverty, which means you get more of it, that we saw in the 1960s, and how ending it and putting limitations around it can actually encourage work. What a simplistic idea, but profound in a culture that is so upside down. The Bell Curve, which was an incredibly important book, one of the most controversial books by any public policy expert, is must reading. And now he has a new book called By the People, Rebuilding Liberty Without Permission. I just finished this book. I love this book because for once we're seeing, particularly from a libertarian, we don't see this very often, Charles Murray, a book that actually offers a plan of action. Libertarians are extremely good at sitting back and commiserating, but not a whole lot of plan for action. Your book offers just that. Welcome to the program.
Kevin, you've just described my entire career up until this book when you say that I've never had solutions. And indeed, my laugh line that I use when I'm asked questions about that is, I'm a libertarian, and libertarians don't do solutions. But this time...
That's right. We don't do solutions. Yeah, you're absolutely right. By the way, are you an INTJ personality type-wise? I'm just curious.
INTJ?
INTJ, personality type-wise.
You know what? I think I've heard of that classification system you're talking about, and I've never taken it for myself.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious because you seem like one based on the way you write. I am one, and so you're a hero of mine, so I would assume you are too. And I have another question for you. It's going to sound a little ridiculous, and I'm going to take the liberty of doing it, but I am I have to believe you're familiar with the movie Idiocracy.
Oh, you're catching me up for a second time. No, I'm not.
Do you realize that there are literally thousands of references in Google to the movie Idiocracy and Charles Murray?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a ridiculous movie. It's a comedy about the future of the United States based on the demographics of how people are having children today. Affluent, educated, having very few. The impoverished, undereducated, having many. And in the end, it produces an idiocracy. It reminds me a lot of the Bell Curve. It's the Bell Curve perverted is basically what it is. But it rings a lot of what you say, no pun intended, it rings a lot of what you argue in the Bell Curve. I encourage you to look it up.
I will.
Yeah.
As soon as I get off the phone with you, I'm going to have to Google that.
It's a ridiculous movie. I warn you. It's not highbrow or even midbrow. It's ridiculous. Luke Wilson is the star of it. It's called Idiocracy. The President of the United States is a former wrestling champion of the world, and Luke Wilson, who got on a time machine, ends up being the guy with the highest IQ of anyone in the United States. They did a test, and he broke the 100 mark. And he was really average in modern America, but because of what had happened, you'll love the movie, I think. If you can tolerate it, you'll love it. Okay, let's talk about serious stuff. I've always wanted to ask you about that ever since I saw Idiocracy. I know I sound like a geeky fan, but honestly, this is one of those rare moments where I do. Tell us a little bit about the book, By the People.
Sure. It's a way that we can push back against a regulatory state that has gotten way out of control. Every one of your listeners who is a small business person or who is a rancher or farmer, or for that matter, just tried to do something to improve their home, will have a horror story probably about how they were prevented from practicing their vocation the way they wanted to, prevented from cooperating with their neighbors to solve a problem, prevented from just doing ordinary stuff by bureaucrats who show up and say, oh, you owe us a $7,000 fine because of such and such stupid regulation that you've never heard of that you're in violation of. Or if you own a workplace, you'll have to do $20,000 of changes, not because they're going to make the workplace safer, but just because the government says you got to do it. I want a way to push back against that through, and this is really the Cliff Notes version, really quick, but through legal defense funds. I want
kind of like taking a chapter out of the left, particularly in the 1970s. That's exactly how they moved everything in the 70s.
There was that, and there was also a very interesting case with Scientology, which wanted to get listed as a religion, and the IRS, for tax purposes, the IRS wouldn't do it, and Scientology just kept suing people until finally the IRS gave up. What I want to do is somewhat different from that. I want simply to have a way that we can ignore stupid regulations, and if the government comes after us, we will have legal representation that we won't have to pay for, that will aggressively go after the regulators, push back, make them wish they hadn't bothered you, and force the regulators to concentrate on things that have happened where real harm has been done. Mm-hmm. Don't come after ordinary citizens who have violated one of your silly, detailed regulations but have done nothing wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the... and we've seen this here locally. There was a school district that, kids showed up at a high school game with banners that had a religious message to it. An atheist group wanted to shut them down from being able to do this. They went and took legal action, against the school district, that being the kids. A church actually did it, representing actually a group. I think it was the Liberty Institute did, and the school backed down. But you know what? I was impressed at the school, that the Liberty Institute says, we not only want you to stop doing this, we're going to continue to proceed with this. We want money for your actions because we never want you to do it again. That's what the left has done for generations. That's what they've done now for decades. And the right, for me, the right has been very weak, very placid in this area. I think it's time for us to have that same kind of hardcore attitude. It needs to hurt if they're going to infringe on any of our liberties.
Exactly right. When a bureaucrat sees a violation of some silly, a harmless violation, they have no incentive not to pursue it. And in fact, if they do make the accusation, 99.999% of the time, the person they make against just gives up without a fight, because we all know we can't afford the legal bills of fighting that. We'll end up spending far more time and money than if we just given in. Well, that's wrong. So if you have a case where all at once you do have legal defense funds, and the book goes into detail about how these could be formed. It's kind of like insurance funds in some cases.
Yeah, that's exactly what it reads like, actually.
Yeah, you're insuring yourself against the government the same way you insure your house against fire, If that were to happen, all at once the bureaucrat has a reason to back down, has a reason to say, gee, maybe I won't bother with it. I'll tell you, Kevin, here's the analogy I use in the book. State troopers on interstate highways. The flow of traffic on interstate highways is above the speed limit. I mean, the flow of traffic is. Most people on the highway are being disobedient. But the cops don't stop people who are going 5 miles over the speed limit. They hold off until they've got somebody who's going really fast or who is driving erratically. And that's as it should be. It's not that there's a speed limit that's the problem. It's the stupid enforcement of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to try to pull the regulators kicking and screaming to common sense, because they don't have any choice.
Yeah, and you're going to have to push our side, those who advocate that, to realize that these kind of tactics are what we are left to do. People want to keep on talking about the Constitution, and frankly, I think, I hate to say it, but I kind of think the anti-federalists were right. Everything the anti-federalists predicted that would happen under the Constitution has largely happened.
We're going to that.
I'm sorry?
You've noticed that.
Yeah, everything they predicted is exactly what happened, And so we're going to have to basically bury the idea that the Constitution is going to protect us and really just be proactive and be creative like the left has done for generations. I give them props for their creativity. We need to steal some chapters from their book. Your book does just that.
Well, I hope that's the intention. And the good news is that it's practical. There's lots of interest in this, even though the book's only been out a few weeks, including by people who can donate money to help get it started. And there's also, I think, a bipartisan aspect to this. The regulators don't just go after, libertarians or conservatives. They go after small business people who vote for Democrats. I think there is a growing understanding, not on the far left, but a growing understanding among moderate Democrats as well as people on the right, that the federal government is a thing apart. It's not us. It's not an extension of our will. It is an establishment that is increasingly interested in its own health and welfare, not in serving the people it's supposed to serve.
Charles Murray, one of the greatest thinkers, I think, of the last really half century. I'm always in awe whenever I can get you on the air. It doesn't happen often enough. And in fact, as soon as I get off the air, I'm going to try to get a follow-up interview and get you on it for a little longer time if you're open to that, because
Sure.
My audience needs to hear your message. And I want to encourage everyone, you can check him out over at aei.org. Just put in Charles Murray. But I suggest you go to Amazon.com, put in Charles Murray. A huge list of books will show up. If you don't have any of those books, order every one of the books you don't have and have a blast reading them, because not only will they feed your brain, they make a difference. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
My pleasure, Kevin.
When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdatareview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter, and this is The Price of Business.